My name's Elizabeth Jackson. I'm the owner of Public Property. Today's event is about the National Disability Insurance Scheme, or NDIS. Look, NDIS is in actual fact the program. What we're going to talk about is SDA, which is Specialist Disability Accommodation. What you need to know is the total amount of funding for NDIS will reach about $166.6 billion over the next 4 years. And that was from the October budget, 22-23. NDIS is an Australian federal government initiative that started in 2013 with the support of major political parties. And it was really an incredible thing that they did, because the government at the moment are paying up to $2,000 a day to keep someone with an acquired brain injury in a hospital bed. And somebody said to me the other day, Elizabeth, why don't the government just build these disability houses? And the answer to that is, if they did, they would go broke. It's the most incredible joint venture between public and private sector money. There are around 4.3 million people in Australia who have a disability, and NDIS will provide funding to an estimated 500,000 Australians who have permanent and significant disability. SDA, what is SDA for? It's Specialist Disability Accommodation. It's specialist disability housing. It's designed specifically for those with high care needs to assist with the transition out of nursing homes, rehab facilities, hospital, and ageing parents' homes. Also legacy homes, which have been really where our participants have been sitting for years in actual fact. SDA dwellings have accessible features to help residents live more independently and allow the support to be delivered better and more safely. It also gives participants, and Renee can speak about this, their own autonomy and the ability to choose where they live and how they want to live, which is really important. Types of SDA solution currently in the SDA market. So this is what you need to know. And Carly and Renee can speak about this a bit more, probably more Renee. Inside the SDA housing space right now across Australia, it is being driven by builders. Builders are saying, I will build it and the participants will come. And a lot of people are buying from these builders. We don't work in that space at all, and we never will, because there are supply and demand metrics that have to be looked at. There is the capacity of the builder that has to be considered. There is the compliance around that. You can't spend government money without compliance, and a lot of these builders don't actually understand that compliance. There is participant-driven programs. Our participant-driven program is the participant themselves saying, we need a home, and going out and getting the builder to build that home. And a lot of those properties actually are being bought by institutional purchasers around Australia. That's not the market we work in. We do occasionally we had some properties in Tasmania, and there was an urgent call from an SDA saying that they had participants. So we did sell a number of properties in the Tasmanian market, but it happens very, very rarely. Now, there is the market that we work in, which is provider-driven. Renee, do you want to talk a little bit about what a provider-driven market is?
Yeah, absolutely. So how that works for us in particular is, what we do is we have a really strong network on the ground in Southeast Queensland. And how that works is we are constantly meeting with our network, which is SDA providers, support coordinators, hospital, allied healthcare, the liaison officers that need to place people coming out of care, whether that be aged care or hospital care, into appropriate housing. And they will tell us what that need is, what that demand is, where it is, and what it looks like. And when I mean what it looks like, I'm referring to what category it needs to be built to. And, if there's specific requirements based on that participant's needs, they need to be able to have an extra living space because they need to have that independent time because of their complex disability, things along those lines. Their support coordination, whether that be via care or family, just general network, is in this particular location. They don't want to move out of that area. Otherwise, they will be isolated. And so we collate that information on a weekly basis, and we are packaging to the exact data that we've been given by our network.
So this is really important. So provider driven means Renee speaks to the SILs and the SDAs about demand areas. Now, the supply and the demand metrics of SDA is a really complicated space, and there are government websites that will give you information on the demand statistics. The issue with those government websites is, natural fact, you're better to ask the people on the ground. We don't know how accurate or how up to date the data is. We know government does its very best, but when you've got Renee in an office calling the SDAs and the SILs saying, where do we need to buy, where are the demand, and when we say where do we need to buy, where do we need to position a participant currently in the Southeast Queensland market? Southeast Queensland has been pretty problematic, and that's why the association with Renee is really important, because she's on the phone talking to the SILs and the SDAs about where we need to put these houses for these participants. Okay, who is Public Property? I'm a licensed real estate agent. I have a corporate license down here in Melbourne. I also have one in Southeast Queensland. I have the ability to sell real estate in 3 countries and 2 states here in Victoria. I only currently do SDA investing. It's taken me about 2 years worth of serious research and a lot of airplanes to get to the stage where I'm really comfortable to align with Renee's organisation, and also to work alongside Carly. You know, Carly's incredible. She's looked at SDA lending. She allows our clients to go on a really fluid experience through from first initial conversation into a borrowing capacity into a transaction. And Carly can speak about that when we get to the next couple of slides. I have made it my mission to ensure that we mitigate as much purchasing risk for our investors as I possibly can. SDA. So SDA providers, who are they and what do they do? They're the tenancy management team, and their job is to do the participant placement for you. So when the property is being built, Renee's team will introduce you to 2 or 3 SDAs. Is that accurate, Renee?
Yeah, depending on the location of the property, we do an introduction to SDA providers that we would recommend in the market.
And then what you would do is you would allow them to take over a head lease arrangement with your property. What will they charge, Renee? How does that work as a process?
Yeah, so every SDA provider have their own processes, fees and charges in place. What we've noticed on an average basis and nationally is about 10 to 15%. And that, you know, will include, some will just do a fixed price percentage with no extra fees added throughout the duration of the tenancy. Others might go a lower percentage rate of management fees, but they add in extra costs. So every provider is different, and it's really important to make sure you're looking at those fees and charges. But yeah, generally 10 to 15%.
And the placement fee?
Placement fee, again, varies between providers. Some are around, like you're starting at your non-for-profits, around that $2,500 to $5,000, and then for-profits can be up to $13,000 per participant. Some SDA providers like their clients to engage in a specialist tenancy placement service. There is a couple of companies that do exclusively that. They work placing tenants, doing their SDA funding packages, making sure they have the right level of funding. And then other SDA providers include it in their service.
Okay. Who are the SILs and what do they do, Renee?
So SIL providers are engaged to basically assist the participants in the home through the OOA, the on-site overnight assistance. And basically they manage the roster of care. They connect them to the community. They have a really great working relationship with the participants and their core supports that are coming in throughout the day, and their family, making sure that they're comfortable in the home, all their needs are being met, and just really almost like managing the tenants in the home on a daily basis.
Okay, so day to day. And a lot of people think there's just one carer in the home. You can actually have one participant can have 2 or 3 carers at a time. Isn't that right, Renee?
Depending on their needs and how complex they are. So some people might be a one-to-one care 24/7. Others might need a roster of care coming, to manage that 24/7. Others might just need, a few hours a day. So it's really dependent on the client's disability, their needs, and how independent they are or how much dependence they need.
Okay, thank you, Renee. Okay, this is the fun stuff. Finance requirements. Carly, do you want to have a conversation? This is your space, my friend. Take it away. Talk to us about what a client needs to think about when they're looking at actually financing an SDA home.
Okay, so look, I'll start with a little bit about me, just so as you understand who you're dealing with. As I said, 22 years finance experience, and we have been writing NDIS or SDA loans for the last 3.5 years. It has been a revolving door, I suppose is the best way to put it, where it was quite difficult at the beginning. Now it is usual lending. So the way I explain to all clients is lending is a residential loan with a true NDIS valuation. So the valuation becomes the most important piece of the puzzle when you're looking at SDA lending, because that's where you're going to capitalise on your LVR, which is loan to value ratio, as well as the true rental return you can receive from the property. So those valuations do start at about $2,500 plus GST. And they can take up to 15 business days to be completed. Lending is true residential lending, so it's not high commercial lending. It's pretty standard. It is what they call a fully verified product. So when we're assessing an application, we are taking into account all income, all expenses, but we're also taking into account the true rental return. So with SDAs, the rental return can be very, very high. That's why it becomes a lucrative investment. And being able to take that into account is the difference of being able to afford an SDA property and not being able to afford an SDA property as such, or an investment property. So you can borrow up to 90% of the value of the property. I've been in discussions with the funder to look at possibly introducing a 95% lend on a fixed rate, which will open up the playing field to probably another 50% of people who might be a little bit equity poor, or the equity's already tied up, or cash poor, but it's a revolving industry, and it's very lucrative. It's something that we write every single day of the week, so it is something that we do specialize in.
So how long does it take to get pre-approval from application?
Okay, so from the day that clients meet me as such, and I've assessed an application and issued a proposal, it's about 2 weeks from once we've submitted an application to gain a pre-approval. I won't allow any clients to not go through the pre-approval process. That's the starting point. We're not going to start ordering valuations, those sorts of things, until I've got that piece of paper in my hand. The reason being it's protecting you. You're not costing, it's not costing you valuation fees, those sorts of things, if there's anything untoward in the back end that credit can maybe take a dislike to. Once we've got a pre-approval and you found a property, then it's about 4 weeks from pre-approval to formal approval, and that's taking into account the valuation time as well. And as I said, the valuation is completed as if complete valuation. So we use the land contract, the build contract, and either a calculator from a government site that tells us what our rental return is, or a rental appraisal letter from a SDA provider. as the valuers are trained to be able to take into account the additions and adjustments to the property, as well as the true rental return, this is where 95% of people are then able to enter into that loan contract because it's affordable. So they're taking into account the rental return, even though the property is not yet built.
Yeah, that's really good. So your range to borrow might be less in a mainstream residential market, but your ability to borrow in an NDIS space can actually be inflated because of that rental return. Is that right?
That's 100% right. So, you're purchasing a standard property, you might be able to rent that for $500 a week. You're purchasing an SDA property and you might be able to rent that for 150,000 plus a year. So when you do the background, you're talking about 30,000 rental return versus 150,000 plus. So it boosts your affordability straight away. There's not a lot of lenders in the SDA field currently. However, the funder so there's one funder, and they've got several mortgage managers attached to them. I'm accredited with 4 of them, including one that's owned by the funder. Their flavor is SDA, so they want to write it. They like it, and it's, as I said, it's not an incredibly expensive, in interest rates, fees, those sorts of things, but it is a specialty product.
What would the average interest rate be at this stage?
So right as of today, and this is obviously before the latest RBA increase, the average would be about 6.74.
Okay.
Yeah.
How much money do they really need? Does a purchaser need in for a deposit? Like, we're talking, do they need to have $100,000 to $160,000 there waiting to buy one of these SDA properties?
Not necessarily cash sitting there. We can always look at leveraging against existing properties. So,
okay.
So I would suggest to anybody, if you've got a home loan, you don't necessarily want to pull your cash out and use that towards an SDA. We would want to show you how to make the entire loan I suppose a taxable allowance. You want to be borrowing the maximum on your investment debt and minimum on your owner occupied debt. And that's just the difference of what I call good debt and bad debt. So good debt being investment debt, it's going to give you tax deductions. It's, you're earning a rental income from it, etc. Bad debt is your home loan. Sure, it puts a roof over your head, but it's no benefit to you. It's just a cost.
Okay, that's good to know. Yeah, there's the thing you need to know about buying an SDA home, and the reason why Carly's here is you're signing an unconditional contract, which means there are no finance terms. So Carly's actually, once we've had our initial conversation with you and you're happy to, because really what you have to do when you meet with me is you've got to decide whether you like my program. And if you like my program, then the next step is to go and get pre-approved with Carly. We're not about to secure a property for you that we're unclear and that we don't have any clarity that you're going to be able to complete and purchase. That's why Carly's so important in the mix. Above all, what we want to do is we want to make sure that experience, that purchasing experience, is really fluid and that everything is entirely transparent. So the other thing that Carly does, and you can hear it in her language, is she understands structure. There are a lot of inexperienced mortgage brokers out there and brokers in this field, but they don't understand how to look at the total property portfolio and allow you to make a purchase without decimating or blowing up your current portfolio, allowing you to continue to purchase on again. Is that fair, Carly?
Yes, that's right. Yeah. So when I'm assessing an application, I'm taking into account what you want to do now as well as what your future plans are. So, there's no point in saying, yep, we're going to use all of this equity up if your plan is to say sell that property and buy a larger one, and that's going to stop you from doing that. So it's really important, and I'm bound by a lot of government rulings, and I'm bound by things like best interest duties, responsible lending, AFCA, ASIC, etc. And part of my role is in the long run, I work for you. I don't work for anybody else except for the client. And I need to make sure that when I'm assessing an application, that the only person that is benefiting from that is the client, not my back pocket, not Elizabeth, not Renee, nobody else but the client. Because that's what I'm bound by. Besides the fact I'm bound by it, that's what makes you be a good business person and good human being.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
Carly, someone's just asked, are you able to advise which lenders you to use?
Yeah, so I've just responded back. So
okay, great.
The funder is known as Columbus Capital, or Colcap, also known as Origin. I lean towards Granite Home Loans, who's owned by the funder. I lean towards them because I have my own credit team. I've got a direct line to the head of credit. I've got a direct line to the CEO, and I can get things done that others can't. I also have availability to products that nobody else has. So that makes it, I suppose, for us, a more lucrative deal for our clients.
Thanks, Carly. Thank you for that. Let's go to the next page. Okay, so property lease type. When you hand your property over to the SDA, they take a head lease arrangement with you, it will be either a 5x5 or a 10x10. But the types of leases that the participants engage in, and Renee, you can probably speak to this better than I, most SDAs will actually take a participant and only put them under a 12-month lease.
Yeah, so you're still bound by the RTA, Residential Tenancy Act, on leases for participants, like any other standard residential tenancy lease. And so at most, you really only want to be signing them into a 12-month lease with right of renewal. So that is different to the head lease that's in place with the SDA provider and the landlord who owns the property.
The other thing to know too, a lot of people ask me when the money is going to come through from the participants. So when the participant's placed in the property, the government pay in arrears. You're not going to all of a sudden see money come straight into your account. How long can that take up to, Renee?
So once again, really dependent on the SDA provider that you're working with and how they're billing and how they're dispersing. Some do it on a monthly basis, some do it a fortnightly basis. So it could be a fortnightly in arrears or monthly, just depending on your provider.
This is the thing, you need to have a certain amount of cash up the front and a certain amount of cash at the back, and Carly will take that into consideration for you. So you can hold those mortgage payments while you wait for the participant placement, and you then wait for the money to come through from the government.
Yeah.
Okay, so there are 4 main categories of homes. There is high physical support, robust, improved livability, and fully accessible. Now, all of these homes, there's actually a calculator that I can send to anyone that wants to reach out to me at the end, but all of these homes come with their own individual return. And also the other thing is they have location factors. So depending on where that property is ideally located as well, then the income is actually available to you on that calculator. But really, if I look at a high physical support with 2 participants and an OOA, which is a carer, can earn you up to $170,000 a year, and then in some areas up to $195,000 a year, just depending on the area where you are positioning your high physical support tenants. We don't sell robust. Robust is a really interesting space. All of my research around robust, it feels to me to be a very problematic space, so we're staying away from it as an organisation. Renee, do you want to talk about the difference between a high physical support home and our improved livability space?
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously high physical support is the highest rated category. It's designed for people that have complex needs, high needs, that are generally wheelchair bound. They may need a hoist to have their daily cares and, have lots of equipment that come along with them. Improved livability is designed for people that have generally use of their body. So they might have, it might be somebody who has psychosocial disabilities. It might be a person who has Down syndrome. It might be visual impairment. It's just different types of disabilities. And so those homes are designed for people that you walk in and it looks like a standard home, but just with really large spaces. So the doorways are larger. They're still transition free. They're illuminated through the hallway for ease of use. And it creates a really wonderful space. And it might be that those persons' needs aren't as high throughout the day. So they might have, support coming in for a couple of hours to do things, but they might have full capacity to do everything, but just need some supports. Now, the improved livability space is actually a really lovely space. I believe creating improved livability homes is just something that is a point of difference. It hasn't been done very much in the market. And if you think about participant-led designs, if you're a participant who has IL funding and you walk into a home that is designed for you and your disability, you're thinking, this is great. This is actually designed for me. It doesn't have high physical support operations. Like if you walk into most that say, well, HPS can actually take a HPS client, a fully accessible and an IL. Yes, they can, but is that participant led? The participant wants to be in a home that is comfortable and has been built for them and for their everyday living. And that's what IL does. And so the rate of participants that have IL funding is actually really, really high. And majority of the clients that are coming out of legacy stock that need to be moved into new SDA homes will have IL funding attached to them. And so creating a home where they will be paired with another IL person is also a real bonus. We have direct feedback from clients, multiple clients, that have gone into high physical support homes and they are an IL participant matched with a HPS participant. Their care needs, they feel like they get left behind because the other person has higher complex needs and they feel like, a lot of the home is designed for their use, for their equipment and for their care supports. So the livability then is really fractured, and we see a lot of IL participants wanting to move out of that space into homes designed for them. And their funding package just got increased by, I think if you across the board, it was like 60%.
Yeah, it's interesting. So what Renee's company are doing, they're actually building a number of beautiful ILs for us in and around these high demand areas, so closer to Brisbane CBD and closer to the Gold Coast, because as Renee talked about earlier, the demand really is in those pockets. They are not cheap properties. You're not going to see an 8 in front of a IL or a high physical support, but what you are doing is you're placing a property into an area where no one has had the fortitude to think of building in these areas. They're also high capitalizing areas. So what we're doing is we're mitigating your risk in finding a participant by putting you into a property which is really closer to all these central hubs. Renee said to me the other day she found one and there was a bottler around the corner and she just knows they'll have the participants lining up down the road to try and get in there. Hey ladies, thank you so much for today.